Erev Rabatai. Yesterday we were talking about, according to Zohar Kadosh, about rebuking your fellow man. So we said, just, briefly, I reiterate, right, what we said yesterday. That Hashem rebukes somebody, when he sins, first time in private, and then in front of his friends, and then in front of everybody. And we should do the same, says Zohar Kadosh, right? First time in private, second time with his friends, and third time in front of everybody. That's what it says. Okay, but then we said something like this, right? We said, once you do 3 times, Hashem says, you know what? I'm going to leave him alone. I don't want to mess with him anymore. And you should do the same thing, right? After 3 times, leave him alone. Let him do whatever he wants, Hashem will take care of it. The cheshbon will come, right, in the end. He'll give cheshbon for everything. So that's it, leave him alone. But the question is like this, right? Why leave him alone? Because, as we said, right, according to Talmud, according to RAMBAM, you're supposed to keep going. Even 100 times. So why does Zohar say to leave him alone? What's the reason for that? So says the Zohar, the answer is because Hashem doesn't want, to embarrass him too much, going too far. Because Hashem has mercy on people. He doesn't want to embarrass anybody too much. That's why, we say 3 times, 3 strikes you're out, as we said, right? That's it. But no more, because Hashem has mercy, on people. Even the sinners, even the Rashaim, He has mercy on them. He doesn't want to offend their dignity, their honor, too much, to embarrass them too much. And that's why, not more than 3 times. That's it. So therefore, says Zohar Kadosh, what about if you know somebody, right? There are people like this, especially in our times, right? There are people very sensitive. Everybody's sensitive today, right? You tell them something, he tells you, what did you tell me? What? How did you tell me something like that? He cares about his honor, about his dignity. He's very embarrassed by, somebody telling him something, in front of people especially. So, says the Zohar Kadosh, if you know somebody like this, he's very sensitive. And he gets embarrassed, if you tell him something, he's like, oh my God, he gets really, his face turns like, snow, pale. There are people like this, very sensitive. So says the Kadosh, right, what do you do with somebody like this, Because anything you tell him, even if you tell him in private, take him to the corner, right? He also gets embarrassed by that as well. So even that he's very sensitive. So what do you do with a guy like this? Just leave him alone? You can't do that, right? Because it says in the Pasuk, Hocheach tochiach et amitecha. Right, it says, you have to rebuke, the Pasuk says. So you can't just leave him alone. So what do you do? Right, so says Zohar Kadosh, nice solution. Right? What do you do? So he says, you know what you do? Don't rebuke him directly, don't tell him directly, oh, you sinned, you did this and that. No, you're a bad boy, you sinned. Don't tell him like that. He gets embarrassed like that. So what do? Tell him, like as if you're just telling a story, Yeah, tell him something, start telling him a story, and then in the end you tell him, a person who does this, that's asur, you're not allowed to do that, he's not allowed to do it. So you're not telling him that he did it. You're just telling him, if a person does this, he gets punished, it's a sin. You tell him indirectly, third person. You understand? Because if you tell him directly, he's going to faint, Very sensitive. This is how you do it, to a person like that. Tell him in an indirect way, and then mention it. By the way, who else do we know, right, that it says in the Torah to say like this? The parents, right? Kibud avim, father and mother. So what does that mean? If you see your father and mother, right, they say, doing a sin, don't tell them directly, oh, Abba, you did a sin, you did this, asur, Abba. You're not allowed to say like that to your Abba. So what do you tell him? You tell him, right, Abba, didn't you teach me one time, that this is not allowed to do like this? Don't tell him you did it. Tell him, yeah, didn't you teach me one time? You remember you taught me? Yeah, it's not allowed. Don't tell him you did it, no. You cannot speak like this to your parents, because it's not respect. It's not kavod, So you tell him like this, also indirectly like that. That's another thing that we do, like, right, because we want to give kavod to the parents. And so you have to tell them in a way which is kavod for them. And also somebody who's sensitive, same thing, because he cannot take, harsh words, tell him, oh, you did it. He's going to go crazy, and going to lose his mind like that. So what can you have to have mercy on him? Even though, by the way, I have to tell you, it doesn't say like this in the RAMBAM. Over there. According to the Talmud, it doesn't say this, but the Zohar Kadosh says like this. So says Zohar Kadosh, why? Why do we do like this? Because Hakadosh Baruch Hu, again, right? He's very particular, about people, not to embarrass people. So if you know somebody who's very sensitive, he gets very embarrassed, So Hashem doesn't want to embarrass him too much. So we tell him, tell him in a nice way like this, indirect, third person. Like, I'm observing from the outside. Yeah, if a person does this, he's a sinner, not you did it. No, don't tell him like that. Right? That's what it says in the Zohar Kadosh. Okay, very interesting, right? So, that's what it says. But as we said, right, on the other hand, question is, what's the halacha? Is the halacha like the Zohar? Or is the halacha like the RAMBAM? The RAMBAM says like the Talmud. Even 100 times you have to keep telling him more and more and more until he hits you. Jach! Right? Like that. So, what's halacha then? So, the general rule is, that when we have a machloket between Kabbalah and halacha, we go like the halacha. Halacha is more. It's more important. It's more chashuv. It's more. So halacha is always more than the Kabbalah. If there's a machloket, we go like the halacha. Because Kabbalah, it's like it's chasidut. It's like extra. Something extra. Something more. Also, there's another thing, which is that, let me tell you something interesting, right? Which is that the Kabbalah, really, most of the Kabbalah, that we have today comes from the Zohar. That's where it comes from. Everything is from the Zohar. Zohar is a very big book, lots of volumes, it's big.
Isn't the Kabbalah and Zohar the same thing?
It comes from there, But you know why I don't say like you, you know why? Because there are things in the Zohar which are not Kabbalah, just pshat, simple things, midrash, stories, that's not Kabbalah, so there are things in the Zohar which is not Kabbalah.
I cannot compare, but I heard that Kabbalah. Yeah. Some people like a translation saying Kabbalah, but it actually means Zohar.
Right. So the thing is, the Zohar has different parts to it. There are some parts of the Zohar which are Kabbalah. Some parts are just midrash, stories, or minhagim, things like this, musar. It's not all Kabbalah, the Zohar. Not everything is Kabbalah there. If you learn the Zohar, you know that that's the case. So that's why I say, right, the Kabbalah comes from the Zohar, but not all the Zohar is Kabbalah. Not everything there is Kabbalah. So that's why I say it that way.
So what you would say, it's midrashim?
Yeah, midrash, yeah. In fact, the older rabbis, the older generations, they call the Zohar a midrash. They say it's a midrash of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon, that's what they call it, midrash of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. It's a midrash, But the truth is, that the Ramchal says, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, alav shalom, he says that every midrash is Kabbalah, not only the Zohar. All the midrashim are Kabbalah. We just don't know how to understand it. We need a Rabbi for that to explain to us. But all the midrashim are Kabbalah. They're all Kabbalah. So Zohar is also like one midrash, but it's the biggest one, the huge. Also, Rabbi Shimon, right? The Shita to Rabbi Shimon and his Talmidim, whatever, his Chavirav, his friends. So it's very chashuv, very holy, very kadosh. Okay, whatever, you get the idea, right? So anyway, generally, we say the halacha, we go like the halacha more than the Kabbalah. Because the halacha comes, you know why? Because the Zohar is just one book, And what happened was the Talmud, which was written first? The Zohar or the Talmud? Which came first?
Talmud.
No, the Zohar came. Why? Because Talmud is Emoraim, right? And the Zohar is Tanaim. Understand? Rabbi Shimon is Tana. So the truth is, that the Zohar is older than the Talmud. Much older, like a few hundred years, It's much older. So here's the thing, right? The Zohar is older, and also Talmud Yerushalmi, right? Also, it's older than the Talmud Bavli. Older, right? But the Zohar was even before. Who wrote the Yerushalmi, Talmud Yerushalmi? Rabbi Yochanan, right? Rabbi Yochanan, right? He was not Nasi.
Okay.
He was in Eretz Israel. He was a Talmid of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He was a Talmid of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yochanan. So he was the one who wrote the Yerushalmi. But the Zohar was Rabbi Shimon before, right? A couple generations before that. Okay, anyway, the point is like this, right? That since the Talmud came after, the Zohar, and it came after Yerushalmi also, Talmud Bavli, that's why we go like that, because we call that Batra, right? It's the latest one. So what does that mean, latest? Why do we go like the latest one? Because we say, right, Batra, that means those rabbis over there in the Talmud, they knew what they said in the Zohar. They knew what they said in the Yerushalmi. But they didn't accept it, they argue on it. So that's the last word, That's why it's more chashuv. It's because it's a Batra. The rule is, we go like the Batra. What does it mean, Batra? The last one, the last rabbi. Because he looked at the old opinions, but he didn't agree with that, he said something else. That's the last thing, the chotam. So therefore the rule is, we go like the halacha. But
why are we doing halacha with paying, like, giving more respect to Rishonim than Nachronim if you're going by your shita? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So good question. Okay, the answer is like this, right? That we're not allowed to argue with the Rishonim, who were 600 years ago. We're not allowed to argue with them. And the Rishonim were not allowed to argue with the Amoraim, who were 500 years before them. And the Amoraim are not allowed to argue with the Tanaim, who were a few hundred years before them. That's the way it is. Why is that? Because the older generations, they were bigger, they were smarter than we are. They were smarter.
But the Gemara choleket another person.
Oh, this is a good thing. What you guys asking? Now I understand your question. I got your question. So the truth is, it contradicts, right? On the one hand, we say you're not allowed to argue with the Tanaim,
Yes.
right? On the other hand, we say we go like the Batra.
Yeah.
The halacha is like the Batra. So you know what the answer is to your question? Very good question, by the way. The answer is that when we say Batra, we mean in this period, of the Achronim. But when it comes to the Rishonim, we don't say Batra against the Rishonim. You understand? So if you argue with the Rishonim, the RAMBAM, and people like this, right? The Rashba, right? You're not allowed to argue with them. We don't call you Batra. We call you Shotet, Tipesh, idiot. Why? Because you're not on the level to argue with these people. You're not allowed on that level. So when we say Batra, we mean the Batra of those generations. The Achronim, the Batra of the Rishonim, right? The Batra of the Tanaim. That of each period. Kufa. That's what it means, Batra. That's the answer to your question.
So as time is going on, why nobody rewrote all these halachot?
Because we're not allowed to argue with them. We're not allowed. Whatever they were much greater than we are. Way greater than they are. We don't compare to their toenails. These old rabbis. We don't compare to them. We're nothing compared to them. Zero. That's the way it is. You know that, right? So that's the thing, So anyway, right, as we said, usually we go like a halacha. But I think he alluded to this, right? But when it comes to tefillot, right, the tefillot, we go like the Kabbalah more. This is a minhag that we have in the Sfaradim, When it comes to tefillah, we go like the Kabbalah over there, This is our minhag, it's our custom, like this. Ashkenazim, no. Ashkenazim, no.
The Tachanun, it's like to sit down. You think it's by the Kabbalah that you need to sit down. No, on Ledavid.
It's more than that. You have to also put your head down, according to the halacha.
Ashkenazim doing it, no?
Yeah, they do it, but they do different mizmor. They don't do the mizmor that we do. There's a whole discussion about that. We can talk about it some other time. But anyway, the whole thing is that like this, right? Usually we go like a halacha, but here, right? There's one rabbi I heard, he said something interesting. He said maybe, better here to go like the Kabbalah, to do only 3 times. Why? Because people are so sensitive today. If you tell them more than that, they may kill you. They may kill you. They get very angry. He may never speak to you again in your life. If you tell him so much. You're gonna make him crazy. And sometimes people, even they leave the religion. They go and they leave the shul. They leave the Yahadut, Judaism. Because people are giving too much hard. So you cannot go too hard to people. So some rabbis say, because in our generation people are very sensitive, maybe a good idea to tell them like the Zohar, only 3 times. That's good enough. After that, leave them alone.
Remember the story, Rabbi, the story when David went to see Bathsheba?
Yeah.
Who came to him? Rebuke him?
Gad and Avi.
Natan.
Right, Natan, yeah, God, yeah.
Now he came by who has sent him. Hashem sent him. And
right.
He rebuked him, but you have to be on a level of David, so he went and started making Shua right away. If
Right,
you're not gonna
right.
punch, you're not
Yeah, but since Hashem told him to do it, he has to do it.
talking to
There's
you.
no choice. When Hashem tells you to do something, you have to do. The Navi,
No, but he didn't understand in the beginning.
Right, I understand, of course, yeah. But the point is like this, that, by the way, the RAMBAM says like this, right? It says in the Talmud, if a Navi doesn't listen to what Hashem tells him, chayav mitah. You have to do what Hashem tells you, Don't make cheshbonot, and say, I don't know, I don't understand that. Why did Hashem tell me this? Who are you to say why Hashem told you? Do whatever He says, that's it, gamarnu, If a Navi doesn't listen to Hashem, חייב מיתה. ברוך ה' לעולם, אמן ואמן. ויהי בכלל השומר, נעשה הקדוש ברוך הוא לעזור כל ישראל, ולפיכך קיבל להם תורה ומצוות, שאמר אדוני חפץ, למען צדקו ילדים תורה וידין.